In summer of 2022, Trevelyan became the first ever player to beat Halo 2 Legendary with all skulls on except Envy, but one of the most recurring comments that we see with comments of people who are angry want to know if something like Halo 2 Legendary all skulls on could be done glitchless. And this is a really interesting topic because when it comes to Halo 2, there are so many different glitches in the entire game that you could argue in a way contributed to Halo 2 being such a popular game years and years later in speedrunning communities or just people playing around on the game itself. Trevelyan has even answered this question multiple times on stream.
The glitchless thing, the reason why that doesn't work is because the AI in the game does glitches on their own. There's a lot of stuff that happens that the AI does that you have no control over.
But here's the thing, when looking at the question as to whether or not Halo 2 Lasso could be completed without glitches, we really realize that this question is way more complex than anybody who's asking the question even realizes, intentionally or not. And after putting a lot of thought into this, what we've concluded is that Halo 2 not only cannot be completed Lasso without glitches, but Halo 2 itself can't be completed on any difficulty without glitches. So yes, we are making the conclusion. Halo 2 cannot be completed without glitches. Period. Done. Okay, so we really do want to make sure we're looking at this accurately, because if there is a way to complete Halo 2 without glitching, we definitely don't want to miss it because we're not accounting for everything. Now, firstly, this question often gets brought up and sometimes has been misconstrued by some players who are more referencing things like the prison skip, as that is a massive glitch that allows you to bypass one of the hardest sections in all of Halo 2. Now, let's say Luke and I were, for whatever reason, chosen to be in charge of being the judges and reviewing footage of Halo 2 glitchless runs, and had to not only make the rule set, but then also look at submitted runs to make sure that no glitches were performed. Things get incredibly complicated very quickly. For instance, let's say we base this idea around prison skip, and we need everybody submitting their run to complete prison. If we make a blanket rule like no skips in Halo 2 are allowed, which would be consistent with the rule of not skipping prison, you can quickly see how some of the criteria for what is allowed and isn't allowed quickly starts to contradict itself. If we make a rule saying no skips in Halo 2 allowed, does that mean if someone is playing on, say, Delta Halo and doesn't stick around till the end of the firefight section in the ruins and wait for a warthog to come down, something that most players forget is even a part of the game, does that count as a skip? You are bypassing loads, aren't you? Surely you can stay in bounds and walk and maybe make the argument for this case, but in spirit, is that really all that different than something like the prison skip, where all you're doing is just punching a brute who followed you into an elevator? Or the question came up again on outskirts. Many times, a lot of us use outskirts and just jump up on the rooftops and navigate up there, skipping a lot of the level itself and some specific encounters by going up this route. You could make the same argument here, however, at the same time, with the fact that there are multiple Easter eggs hidden outside up on these buildings, you could make the argument that going on the rooftops is an alternate route and not a glitch or skip itself. But if anything, it does make the classification as to what is considered inbounds and out of bounds more confusing later on. If we go back to Delta Halo again, for example, do we go the main route around, or can we go over the hills that are technically out of bounds, but there are Easter eggs out here too, like the Halo 2 anniversary dolls? Another big example that other critics point to for a potential reason why a glitchless Halo 2 run should be done for challenges is because of another glitch known as the high charity skip, where essentially you melee cancel a flood form and fly across a gap, hitting the end trigger of the level. Now, at this point, the whole idea of avoiding skips is seeming more and more unlikely, but what actually is the problem here with this specific glitch? Nobody's really questioning if something like grenade jumping is a glitch. It's not, it's just using the physics in game to give yourself extra height, but does that change the criteria for something like a melee cancel that you would use for the flood flying on high charity? This actually opens up a whole nother can of worms with things like button combos. Technically, Bungie has spoken that in Halo 2, 2, the very popular BXR, which is a button combo you do to cancel your reload animation early so you can get back into combat faster in between reloads, was in fact a glitch. But everybody used it and it became a staple of the game itself. If a Halo 2 glitchless run was to be made, there would have to either be a rule inserted allowing you to use the BXR glitch, or every single reload animation would have to be verified before any run could be validated as true to make sure that nobody accidentally canceled their reload early. And then we run into a whole nother can of worms when it comes to sword flying, which definitely was a glitch in Halo 2, no one's denying that, but then what becomes the rules and criteria for whether or not something like this would be allowed? This is really interesting actually. When Halo 2 Anniversary released, there was no sword flying. It was patched out as the 60 tick rate pretty much made it impossible. However, because it was such a staple in the original Halo 2 days, they later did a patch where they added it back into the game, but essentially reprogrammed the way that the sword mechanic worked to recreate sword flying, as there was no way to actually have the original glitch work in the same way without doing a ton of stuff to the game's tick rate. So instead, they essentially created a custom mod to permit sword flying. So would that mean that sword flying is technically no longer a glitch since it was intentionally implemented into Halo 2 Anniversary? Okay, but if we put all of that aside now, and let's say we tried to come up with a rule set where we said, you know, button combos, okay, we're not going to count those as glitches because they've already embraced some of the button combos over the years, like sword flying and whatnot. We will go ahead and say no skips, which means no major skips though, so you'll have to play through all the firefight encounters in Outskirts. On Delta Halo, you're going to wait out for that warthog, and yes, you're going to do the whole entire prison. We run into even more issues still in our potential glitchless run. Now, there's actually this big debate that's existed in the Halo community for a while. Didn't really realize how contentious it actually was, and now people have very strong opinions about this, so we'll try not to make too much of a statement on this one, but a lot of people in the Halo community believe that Halo 2 has a bunch of spaghetti code. Now, popular Halo modder, game preservationist, and YouTuber Vengeful Vadim has stated on Twitter multiple times that he does not believe that Halo 2 is spaghetti code and that that's just a big misconception. And we've also asked Jervalen specifically, and he said it's angel hair pasta, whatever that means. But there are a lot of inconsistencies in Halo 2 that are a result of the game's rush development. That means that even if you are going for a glitchless Halo 2 run, the likelihood of you playing through Halo 2 and not running into a single glitch is pretty much impossible. Let's look at some of these examples here. Halo 2 elites, if they are dual wielding a weapon, when they turn aggro, they will instantly pull out their sword because their sword draw animation gets canceled by the action of them dropping a weapon. Every single elite heretic on Arbiter has its melee completely broken where it won't do any damage to you. If you stand up on this ledge and an elite is following you, it will lose track of you and just leave you alone. If you lean your head too far close to a wall while walking into it, intentionally or not, you are head glitching, making it where enemies will have a much more difficult time seeing you because your head is now clipped through a wall. Sometimes when playing through Halo 2, certain dialogue just won't play. On Halo 2 Anniversary Sacred Icon, this phantom flies in backwards in the cutscene. Okay, this one would probably get a pass, but I just wanted to acknowledge that they never fixed that. That's just a thing that happens here. On Halo 2 Regret, if you kill the elites that spawn in here too quickly, more will spawn in. There's only supposed to be 2 elites. However, because of this, if you're just playing through the game too quickly, boom, all of a sudden you have 4. Elites that carry a carbine a lot of the times can have offset melee hitboxes. And if you're playing an original Halo 2, technically there is the possibility that when you're just jumping, you could accidentally hit a super bounce. Even if it is just the slightest, tiniest bit of a upward bounce because of the way that Halo 2 works, that would technically disqualify your entire run there too. This one would be a great one to just have your entire run end after you've played through all of Halo 2, but occasionally when you're playing in Halo 2, the final cutscene will glitch out, and if there are elites or brutes standing by where the cutscene section takes place, they will glitch into the final cutscene also, and just kind of be there awkwardly. They're not intended to be there. Also, while speaking of things that could go wrong on the last level of the game earlier on, sometimes the pathing on the Great Journey timey with the elites and the banshees can be a little bit off, and when they're supposed to fly in to drop you a banshee off, they just drop it off the side of the map, and then you have to drop down to try to get the banshee. It doesn't happen all the time, but this could happen, and technically that's a glitch. That would be a run killer. Or if you didn't count this, how would you discern the difference of intentional glitches and non-intentional glitches when they could have a benefit or a negative effect either way? In the earliest version of Halo MCC when it first came out, or if you're playing on Halo 2 Vista, for whatever reason, this Wraith at the end is going to be flipped over, and there's going to be a brute that's just not holding a gun next to it. So that's technically a glitch that was made in the process of porting the game over that happens every single time. But technically that does have a benefit, right? Because that's one less enemy that you could potentially die to. One less Wraith you have to deal with. So by intentionally choosing a version of the game that has this glitch in it, you're kind of intentionally doing a glitch at the same time, right? Maybe not, but you see where at least my thought process is going. Then there's a lot of visual glitches or just weird occurrences that can also happen that are completely out of your control, whether you mean for something to happen or not. I was watching streamer Figway play through Halo 2 Legendary Deathless, and he just had this jackal one time just doing this thing. Yeah, I don't know. Also, when an elite does his swing with the sword, technically the sword is supposed to fully have a rotation hitbox with it. However, there's a pretty big hole in the hitbox itself, which is why so many players can just quickly sidestep an elite swing, even though the swing is supposed to be all-encompassing just to wreck you if you get hit by it. In Halo 2 Anniversary, every once in a while you may have heard this one happening if you've watched Lasso playthroughs, but sometimes backsmacking doesn't work. This also happens in regular Halo 2, but it happens way more often in Halo 2 Anniversary. Also, more often in Halo 2 Anniversary than regular Halo 2, just boxes flinging around will crush you and kill you. This doesn't happen as much in Halo 2, which means that it's more as a result of some sort of glitch in the physics engine and damage acceleration or something that causes the death, but it is worth noting there is a discrepancy, meaning that it's likely a cause of some sort of error along the way in porting. One time, Jervalen was playing Halo 2 Anniversary, and he had Tartarus just break randomly. Like, he had no idea what was going on, but it was kind of hilarious.
Oh my god! Get a life! Dude! Why is he jumping off the edge? No way! This is not real!
This could be another potential place where your game would just technically be invalidated, because even though Jervalen didn't intentionally cause this glitch to happen, it is a glitch that gave him a massive benefit. There's also random occurrences where even enemies may accidentally do a super bounce, similarly to how a player could accidentally super bounce too.
Uh-oh. That Sniper Jackal just did a super bounce! You saw it here first!
On the Halo 2 level Oracle, there is a chance that if you stick the heretic leader during the boss fight, he might just randomly drop his weapon. Just a random chance of that happening, but it has happened before, which once again falls into this rule of a run being invalidated because of an unintentional glitch happening. Also, in some instances, if you stand on a phantom, like an enemy phantom, it'll just shoot through itself and hit you, which is kind of OP. This one actually happens more often than maybe what you would think of for a glitch like this, but for some reason on Sacred Icon in the final firefight section, sometimes the flood will just overwhelm Halfjaw and he'll just get launched into orbit. It's kind of hilarious, but it is something that happens, and I don't think it was intended to be something that happens. Also, over the years, there's been multiple occurrences of people reporting on random elites throughout the campaign getting kind of weird pathing on them, which causes them to get confused and sometimes will result in interesting movement things happening, which, like, obviously something like this is some sort of glitch going on here. So even if this is just like happening in the background and a player doesn't even notice that, but it is shown even in a glimpse, it could invalidate an entire run, because technically here also it's an unavoidable teabag glitch. Now sure, we could make a list of every known Halo 2 glitch and try to pick and choose which glitches should count because they are the way that the game's programmed or they occur more often than not. but once you start picking and choosing criteria for some of the glitches, it becomes very, very difficult to not contradict some of the glitches that we just said were not allowed. And one of the really interesting things though about Halo 2 is the fact that even with all of these glitches and quote-unquote flaws that you can encounter when playing through Halo 2, it's one of the biggest things that have kept the campaign so interesting over the years. Sure, Halo 2 has a great sandbox, a great story, and really cool structural design when it comes to the campaign, but at the same time, the amount of variables that were programmed into all of the different types of encounters you will face and the paths that you can take is one of the reasons why Halo 2 to this day is one of the most beloved campaigns. There's so much freedom in how you approach each scenario and each encounter and every level on scaling and varying difficulties that ultimately no two playthroughs end up being exactly the same every time. Not only do we recently do a video where we looked into the RNG or the probability of interesting things happening in Halo games, tying that thought process to the fact that sometimes when things, even if they're not supposed to happen, go in some weird or chaotic way, it leads to even more memorable moments. Some of the funniest experiences I've had in Halo are when something random happens, like an elite sticks himself because he thought he could throw a sticky grenade over some sort of object and it just reflects back and kills him. Or like when you have something weird and unexpected happen when you're just trying to flip your warthog over and it just goes a little bit crazy. These are the cool things that make this game special, and I think that once you have a list so long of rules and restrictions on how you're supposed to play the game, it ruins the whole point of playing the game in the first place. So maybe the question should shift from not can you beat Halo 2 without glitching, but should you even? So at the very least now, you might have a better understanding as to why just a general, hey, go do a Halo 2 glitchless version or do a version without skips is a lot more complicated, to say the least, and it's not something that you could just easily make a blanket system to. Now, obviously, there could potentially be a rule set made that took the spirit of a Halo 2 glitchless run, but it would have to be very, very specific in explaining to the people potentially running it what the rule set would actually look like. Now, we did point out a lot of very big things that could prevent someone from making a rule set inspired by a glitchless or skipless run, as a true glitchless run is not at all viable. So if any of you really want to take the time and list a comment down below as to what type of rules could fall in line with a glitchless run that would be possible, that could 100% be replicated. I don't know if it's actually at all possible considering some of these unavoidable glitches, but maybe with a few exceptions, there could be some interesting run ideas come up with in the comments. So maybe you can come up with something creative down there, or if you're interested in trying to debunk someone else's route idea, you could also be that person. You might not be the most fun person at parties, but hey, you're invited to this one. That's it for today though. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on for more videos like this uploaded regularly-ish. Also, huge shout out to our patrons who have joined on board to help support this channel and keep it going through trying times in the Halo fan base. If you want to join, honestly, just even throwing $3, that goes a really long way long term, and it'd be really cool to get to chat with you guys on the Discord and other types of posts we make as well. Alright, that's it for today. We'll see you all next time with a brand new video.